It's Jim Czek with KelownaNow. I'm here with Scott Dedels. We used to do the Bitcoin show, but Scott's just in. We're just going to talk about Bitcoin and gold soaring to new highs. Interesting times indeed.
Yeah, I think these are days where it's exciting if you're a holder of either of those. But typically, I think when you see a market where these kinds of assets are outperforming, these are warning bells for larger structural problems. It seems like the sentiment of the market is concerned over finding safe haven for capital.
And yeah, so especially in Canadian dollars, the Canadian loonie is kind of like falling. And then, of course, those assets priced in US dollars are going to even exaggerate their moves to the upside, right? So if you can bring up the chart of Bitcoin there, Rommel. There you go. That's in US dollars.
I've always one way I like to think about the Bitcoin price is it is the most accurate way to measure the dollar losing value. So this is kind of what we see, right? There's only a certain number of Bitcoin. They're always making more and more Canadian dollars. And what we're seeing as the Bitcoin price rises is actually just, you need more and more pieces of Canadian paper to buy a single Bitcoin. And the more people, catch on to this, the higher the price goes.
There's a lot of people talking down in the United States saying that if Donald Trump wins, it's going to be very favorable for Bitcoin because he's come out and said that he would actually even make it part of their for the like a reserve asset.
Yep. I think Bitcoin has an obvious future as a strategic reserve asset for every country. And part of the reason is it dates back to the U.S. decision to freeze U.S. Treasury that belonged to the Central Bank of Russia at the start of the Ukraine war. And there is just a use case for countries having the ability to transact outside of the SWIFT system, sort of the legacy pipelines for running money internationally. Not every country, this might be a shocker for us, but not every country wants to do what the U.S. says in their international policy, whether you agree with it or not. Part of the Bitcoin bet is a bet on countries wanting to have the ability to guarantee that they can transact with each other without permission from a third party. And actually, within the last 24 hours, yesterday, Donald Trump has made some claims about ending federal income tax. Yesterday, he was talking about ending tax on transacting in crypto and Bitcoin specifically. So these are all like really bullish sentiments. Bitcoin is a form of money, the native currency of the internet. The future of Bitcoin is that it will not be taxed, at least at certain transaction levels. I believe in every jurisdiction. And a reason why this, you can believe this is going to happen is I think it was UAE made an announcement like this about 2 weeks ago that transacting in Bitcoin would be a non-taxable event.
Yeah, and we've also seen, we've also heard from Kamala Harris camp that they're going to be favorable to Bitcoin, but I watched the market thing yesterday and they didn't seem to have as much faith in that as it being favorable as they did in having Donald Trump, because he's been more outspoken on what he would actually do.
Yeah, I think, the Democrat Party has been definitely the party of establishment financial censorship. And they, so I would think that if Harris were to win next week, you would see that the market react negatively to the Bitcoin price in the short term. A Trump win, it wouldn't surprise me if we went over 100,000 US in November.
Wow. And then gold has also been reacting very favorable. I know that's not kind of up your alley. It's more my kind of thing, but gold is breaking out to all new highs too, both in US and in Canadian dollars. Like, who would have thought you would have saw 38.45 for the price of gold in Canadian dollars and, 27.67. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that it's got a lot more runway left in front of it. But I mean, Bitcoin obviously, in its shorter period of time has done extremely well. Like, I mean, like what is Bitcoin's life, about 10 years now?
15 years.
15 years.
I mean,
it's an old man. It's an old man, 15 years.
You're a teenager. Yeah, I mean, well, gold has been leading, right? I would say over the last, call it 30 days to 90 days. You know, and that's kind of like what I was saying earlier, Jim, about, to me, gold is a real blinking light on the dashboard where,
The canary in the coal mine for sure. The canary in the coal mine. And I think that has a lot to do with the BRIC nations basically saying we can do without the USD.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and where the dots connect for me on the two assets is, central banks buying gold is an obvious thing, and we don't even know how much they're actually buying. But owning gold for central banks doesn't solve the problem of transacting, and this is where I think there's Bitcoin and gold are kind of hand in glove for central banks, because gold can be held. Bitcoin can be transferred, digitally, anywhere in the world. And the Department of Justice made their own point about this early in the year. Transferred $2 billion of Bitcoin in 10 minutes for, I think, 30 cents. So that part is, everyone knows what Bitcoin can do.
Yeah, I would say that the gold reserves are more of a currency stabilizer for most countries, and especially when you're seeing lots of inflation, because they can rely back on that gold when their currency kind of devalues, and they can go back to that store and then make some exchanges. But it's definitely harder to move that stuff around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of I think in general, and this is why you're seeing both of these assets do what they're doing right now, is global conflict is a lead indicator of money printing. These kinds of things are expensive, and so these are just one example. But there are a lot of reasons why people are wising up to inflation, and the U.S. debt. It took 200 years for the U.S. to accumulate $1 trillion in debt, and now they're just about adding $1 trillion to their debt every month.
I would say, like, it's almost like up to the weekend now, right? Hey, party for the weekend.
Totally. And it's just going to get like, this is how compounding works. It's just going to get faster and faster. And so it's, I think there are 35 trillion right now, 50 trillion by the end of the decade. It's getting to a point where the cost of servicing the debt is going to even outpace what the U.S. spends on the military. And the only way, you have two roads, as Canada's in the same boat. We're even more indebted than they are. You can either default on the money that you owe and collapse your currency, or you can continue to print money and nominally devalue that debt by increasing everybody's numbers. And this is kind of what the Bitcoin price is capturing. As more and more money is created, the price of Bitcoin in that money goes up. So if you look at the Bitcoin exchange rate, call it, with different currencies all over the world, the charts look very different, because the currencies that have already exploded, the Lebanese pound, the Venezuelan bolivar, the Argentine peso, the Bitcoin chart in those currencies, it looks like a straight rocket up to the right. But all government currencies eventually hyperinflate. Like, this is something that has been true of central banking since the start of central banking. It is a feature of the system. So it's just a matter of how fast it happens. When you're continually producing more and more money and spending more money than the value you're creating, it is a one-way ticket to hyperinflation. Is just sort of what we're experiencing in Canada right now. I would say it could be categorized as hyperinflation in slow motions.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see Super Tuesday coming up November 5th to see which direction the U.S. dollar takes, as well as what direction the country takes. The U.S. economy, arguably the largest economy in the world, the largest military, the strongest military, and then the USD is was the world's reserve currency for almost all nations, and then now we're seeing the BRIC nations, and including Saudi Arabia now, that is basically more siding with the BRIC nations than the USD.
Yeah, I mean, you're a fan of Ray Dalio, was talking about this changing world order earlier in the year and released some really great content around the subject. Global reserve currencies, like going back hundreds of years, have sort of had 115-year lifespan. So before the U.S., it was Great Britain and Spain, France, the Dutch, and so these things kind of have a little bit of a life cycle. And the U.S., like if that were to continue, the U.S. should play out on its own as well. I think some key things that happened very quietly, at least over here, earlier in the year in June, was the expiry of the petrodollar agreement between the Saudis and the U.S. And if you start to see the BRICS nations settling oil or energy deals in currencies like, predominantly outside of the U.S. dollar, like things could get really weird really fast. And this could also be a reason why gold is doing what it's doing.
Yeah, China's becoming one of the largest markets in so many different ways. The economy is, it's now the largest the largest auto market in the world. And that's, there's so many changing things that we're seeing real, I guess, like suffering for the legacy automakers. Volkswagen about to close 3 plants because, they're just not able to sell cars into that Chinese market. And all that plays into that US dollar as well, right? So.
Yeah, it's super complicated. On the other side, China is the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. So they, the Chinese, as holders of that, if you consider it an asset, they're not going to be all that interested in the collapse of the dollar because it will, turn that into a lame duck on their balance sheet. Japan is another, Japan is in its own really precarious central bank position, is trying to manage inflation domestically, and they own a ton of U.S. dollars. It's a quagmire.
Yeah. Any predictions on the U.S. election, or you want to get into that sink pot?
Yeah, I'm not a gambler. I think.
Well, the betting markets are saying it's a Trump victory, while as the other polls typically are showing a very, very tight race. But the betting markets are showing that it's like a landslide for Trump.
Yeah, and I would lean with the gamblers more than what you see on TV if it were just me. I think, you're seeing the same kind of stuff. I think at the federal level in Canada, people want some sanity. They want policies that make sense. What I think most people care about is day-to-day life being affordable. And, and so, Trump has them like, I don't know, I don't have a horse in the race, but I think
dinner table issues, though.
There's a broad appeal for some of those things that he is like common sense stuff.
Yeah, dinner table issues. Stuff on the table, getting back and forth to work or getting the kids to soccer practice and stuff like that. Just those easy issues like paying for your rent and your mortgage or whatever. I think those have become so important, especially in this inflationary environment that's mostly been caused by poor policy and poor spending and in Canada, unaccountable spending. They don't even know where the money went, right?
Hey, the Arrive 10 app was supposed to cost 80 grand and they spent 60 million on it and they have no idea where that money went. There's going to be no inquiry into where it went.
Well, they lost the emails the day before they're supposed to turn them over. They somehow deleted them by accident.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the problem we have in Canada is like, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of that situation because that's just a structural problem we have because of where we've arrived with the Senate. And
I just don't understand. I don't understand how the media even accepts that. Like somehow they accidentally deleted the emails just prior to them having to turn them over.
Or Jim, we both know they accept it because if you want to be in the media business in Canada, you need to be on the dole, or you're not going to be you're not going to be viewed as eligible media. So,
well, we're not on the dole, so I guess that's why we're talking even. Otherwise, we would have been told to shut up. But there you go.
Who do you think's going to win next week?
I mean, based on what I see and what I see out there, I believe that what I see in the size of the rallies and stuff like that, it looks like a Donald Trump presidency to me, based on the reaction from the people, like the grassroots people. I think, like obviously the Hollywood stars and that are all leaning Democrat, and then like they seem to get a lot of the big names out there, but
all the people on Epstein's list.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying, like it seems like it seems odd, like you have a bait and switch, even like that Beyonce thing. They got a lot of people to show up to that event in Texas. based on Beyonce going to perform, and a lot of the legacy media promoted it as well, saying, Beyonce is going to perform. And then they don't even deliver on that because like she speaks for like 90 seconds and then the crowd got unruly after that. Right? I mean, they stood in the heat and all that. And then it just seems odd. They can't even deliver on that, right? If you trick people into coming because it's Beyonce and then you don't even get her to sing. And then there's rumors out there that she got paid a whole bunch of money. I don't know the answer to all those things. We'll never probably know the answer to that, but it just seems odd, right? It seems like there's a more of a grassroots movement. Like you would say that the middle of America, it seems odd if you look at America itself, the two coastlines typically favor blue and the middle, the breadbasket of America typically is red. And you wonder why that is so much. I mean, if you look at British Columbia, you look at Alberta, most of British Columbia outside the Lower Mainland votes conservative, and you could say the same thing for Alberta. But the the metro areas typically vote more left leaning, and I think that's more because of I guess maybe they give away more things like rent credits and different things, right? So
Yeah, free stuff. They create the need for free stuff with bad policy. It's like nothing like creating a demand for your own product.
They make you stand in the bread line, and then they make you want to say you have to say thank you for the bread that they're offering, right? So it seems odd, right? Instead of incentivizing people to do more, it's an odd thing for sure. We did our morning show. We're now doing a morning daily show, and we showed two pictures of two cities that are just doing so well, Singapore and Dubai. Both with like very low tax rates and very much into pro-business environments and pro-outside investment. And then those two cities look like just like modern futuristic cities. And we look at some of our cities here that seem to be, they've got people all over the street. We don't have housing for people and all that. And people in Canada, one of the things is the biggest struggle for people is housing. And that seems odd, right? And we live in the richest resource nation in the world.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about like I'm not a Kevin O'Leary guy, but he hit the nail on the head saying we have horrible management, and the country has been really run into the ground with poor leadership, and I think like we're income tax has been around just long enough that people don't realize there were roads and schools and hospitals in North America well before there was income tax that was introduced in the middle of World War I. So one of the great myths is that all of this stuff is funded by tax revenue when at the federal level, at least, it's funded by money printing. And that money printing is what causes the problem, is what causes the breadlines. So, yeah.
Anyway, won't keep you too long today. We'll keep, hey, we should start that Bitcoin show up again. And you're doing a business as well. You've got some stuff going on with payroll stuff too for incentivizing people through being able to pay your employees with Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what we do at Block Rewards. I think that what we are going to see over the next coming years, certainly as the decade plays out, is a broader interest in people diversifying the form of money they're paid in. And the reason for that is exactly what we're talking about right now. It's a 100% certainty that the Canadian dollar will be worth less in 3 years than it is today. And the reason for that is because they are going to need to continually accelerate the rate at which they are making more Canadian dollars. So starting to think about taking some of your paycheck and the only form of money in the world that they can ever make any more of might seem pretty weird today, but I think it's going to get normal pretty fast as we get to a place where an apple costs $8.
Well, I can guarantee you the money will be worth less. Maybe not worth less, but worth less for sure, right? Because history, the chart shows us that, right? So, but and that's just historically. I mean, they have a target rate. They have a target rate of 2% inflation. So that means that
I'm not even. I think I say this all the time. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that inflation is related to prices. So a 2% target inflation rate doesn't mean anything. What I think people should be paying attention to is the rate of monetary expansion, or M2. And that rate in Canada has averaged since 1972 between 8 and 9% per year. So that means roughly every 8 or 9 years, the total amount of Canadian dollars doubles. So that is way higher than 2%. And that's the reason why you see store value assets in Canada becoming financialized, and why real estate in Canada has gone up between 8 and 9%. It's because same thing with the stock indexes. These things are just tracking the expansion of the total amount of money. You know, CPI inflation is an arbitrary basket of goods that they can determine what's in there to try and manipulate and come up with an outcome that they want. So if the price of beef goes up too high too fast, they swap beef out for liver and assume that everyone will just start eating liver, and voila, you hit 2%.
Well, I won't keep you too long. We are doing a preview show of the U.S. election on Friday with me and Renee Merrifield. We'll go through that and we'll do some preview on that. That'll be interesting. Maybe we'll call you in and you can let us know where you're leaning.
Love to. Yeah, anytime, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.